After dying in a fire, I opened my eyes to find myself at my wedding, along with my wife and child. This time, my wife, Isabella, chose her childhood sweetheart, Julian, who had just returned from overseas, choosing to marry him. She was utterly disgusted with me, kicking me out of the company and letting her sweetheart take over. I won't marry a loser. Besides, he's just a dog of my Thorn family. As a result, after her sweetheart took over Thorn Industries, the company suffered consecutive failed bids and even became embroiled in a murder scandal. My wife came begging to me again, but only to ask me to take the blame for her sweetheart. Seeing my reluctance, she tried to use the debt of gratitude I owed her family against me. I laughed maniacally, looking at my wife, who had been reborn along with me. I paid off the Thorn family's debt in my last life. Now, it's you who owe me. Search. Keep searching. If you can't find Isabella today, I'll skin you alive. I opened my eyes to see the furious face of Isabella's father, Mr. Thorn. The stab wounds on my body still ached faintly, but when I looked down, I found no wounds on my body. It was as if being stabbed to death by the victim's family at the entrance of Thorn Industries was just an illusion. Seeing my bewildered expression, Mr. Thorn became even angrier and grabbed the cane beside him, about to smash it down on me. Bang! The cane hit the wall behind me, fully bringing me back to my senses. I looked around and was certain that I had returned to the wedding scene. Mr. Thorn was still pointing at me and cursing, and the words of the surrounding guests enveloped me. I knew an adopted son was unreliable. He doesn't even know to go look for his wife when she runs away. Adopted son. Look at his cowardly appearance. To put it bluntly, he's just a live-in son-in-law. Isabella had disappeared. My brows furrowed and my heart was in turmoil. In the previous life, Isabella and I had successfully completed the wedding. It was on the wedding night that she gave herself to Julian. I caught them in the act, but she used the debt of gratitude to threaten me into silence. Now she had suddenly disappeared, unless she was reborn like me. But before I was stabbed to death, Isabella had already taken all the liquid assets and eloped with Julian. Could it be that they also had an accident? The pain of betrayal followed me like a shadow. I took a few deep breaths before I could barely maintain my composure. The one thing I was sure of was that their elopement had cut off my only chance of survival. Before I could sort things out, I heard a familiar voice. I looked up and saw the missing Isabella, who was walking towards me with Julian on her arm. Her neck was covered in hickeys, and her red lips were still glistening. I won't marry a loser. Besides, he's just a dog of my Thorn family. In front of everyone, Isabella put the wedding ring on Julian's finger, announcing that he was her new groom. I sneered inwardly. Her actions confirmed that only Isabella had been reborn. If Julian had been reborn, he wouldn't have touched the mess that was Thorn Industries with a 10-foot pole. Her eyes were full of disdain, and when she walked up to me, her disgust reached its peak. After today, you will resign voluntarily and hand over all your duties to Julian. Julian had a mocking smile on his lips as he said to me, "Don't take it too hard. Isabella just trusts me." I didn't care about their mockery. My gaze passed through them to the small figure behind them. That was mine and Isabella's child, Leo, who had died in a pool of blood with me in the last life. Leo looked at me with hatred, his eyes showing a maturity beyond his years. He took the initiative to hold Julian's hand. Uncle Julian is a PhD who studied abroad, while Ethan is just an undergraduate. It's only natural that Mom trusts Uncle Julian. As soon as he finished speaking, I was certain that Leo had also been reborn. His words were like the final blow that broke my spine, making me completely give up on this child that I had held in the palm of my hand in the previous life. I was stabbed to death while trying to protect Leo, who was still at Thorn Industries, yet he still hated me. On my deathbed, Leo whispered in my ear, if my real dad were here, he would have been able to protect me. Thinking of this, I couldn't suppress the sneer in my throat. I spread my hands and replied, "It's only right that you change your marriage partner. After all, a child should be with his biological father. But remember this time, it's me who's breaking off the engagement. I think you're dirty." This sentence was like a thunderclap, causing an uproar in the hall. Isabella's eyes were bloodshot. If not for someone holding her back, she would have skinned me alive. "You're just a stray dog begging for scraps from my Thorn family, and you dare to say I'm dirty?" You're not worthy." The way she looked at me was no different from how she would look at a dog she could order around. After calming down a little, Isabella looked at me coldly. "No matter whose child he is, Leo is my child. The child of the Thorne family." I pursed my lips, a lingering bitterness in my mouth. Calculating Leo's age, I could pinpoint exactly when Isabella had become pregnant with him. This was our make-up wedding, but Isabella and I had already registered our marriage 5 years ago. That night, Isabella and I had invited our respective friends for a gathering. Halfway through the party, I discovered the two of them entangled in the bedroom. I stood at the door, hearing everything clearly. I couldn't bring myself to enter, nor could I leave, afraid that people would find out that my wife had cheated on me right after our wedding. Only after the sounds inside subsided did I push open the door. I still remember Julian's humiliating words as he rested his head on Isabella's shoulder, "Isn't this your husband?" Isabella was wrapped in a blanket, revealing a large amount of her skin, and she didn't even spare me a glance, directly ordering, "My clothes are all torn. Go buy me a new set." I can't remember how I bought the clothes and delivered them, only that my body and soul felt separated, obliterating all my emotions. I had already repaid the Thorne family's kindness with one life, and in this life, I will only live for myself. With the backing of the Thorne family's eldest daughter, Julian embraced Isabella and chimed in, "Since we've come to this, you should just initiate the divorce and leave with nothing." The two of them echoed each other, clearly intending to kick me out of Thorne Industries without any cost. The anger within me was like a volcano ready to erupt, but my expression remained calm. "Leave with nothing. I can certainly leave Thorne Industries, but I will take what belongs to me. Haven't you always wanted to control Thorne Industries? I can sell you my shares." Hearing that I was willing to sell my shares, Isabella's eyes lit up. They originally wanted me to leave Thorne Industries, and getting my shares was an unexpected bonus. After all, as long as she could fully control the company, she could use her memories from her previous life to develop it further. I can't read minds, but I could tell from her expression. I sneered inwardly, mocking Isabella's miscalculation. In her previous life, she attributed Thorne Industries' bankruptcy to my decision-making errors, multiple failed bids, and even the purchase of substandard building materials, which led to the building's collapse. But she never realized that the real tumor was standing right beside her. As soon as Julian enters Thorne Industries, its stock price will plummet to rock bottom. My early sale is to secure enough cash. Julian seemed very excited, and after whispering with Isabella for a moment, they finally made up their minds. "Of course, but you can only get half the normal stock price." Even Mr. Thorne frowned at this. I walked up to Isabella, pulled her aside, and whispered in her ear, "You know very well how many dirty things have happened in Thorne Industries over the years. If you don't want to burn bridges, don't haggle with me here." Isabella's eyes were full of suspicion, probably suspecting that I had also been reborn. But no matter how she looked, she couldn't find anything unusual, and she snorted, agreeing to my conditions. "Take the money and get lost. Don't let me see you again. Thorne Industries has been stagnant under your control for so many years. When Julian takes over, he will definitely make Thorne Industries a leader in the industry." No matter what, Isabella always had unrealistic confidence and trust in Julian, but she had no trust at all in me. She seemed to have forgotten that I had also been admitted to graduate school, a path I abandoned because Thorne Industries was on the verge of bankruptcy. My chest felt like it was being pressed by a huge stone, and the frustration was almost unbearable. I stared at Isabella, trying to find a trace of the past in her face. It was my tireless effort, day and night, socializing until I had multiple stomach bleeds and was hospitalized several times, that pulled Thorne Industries back from the brink of bankruptcy. But Isabella could negate all my efforts with a few casual words. I finally understood. It wasn't that Isabella couldn't love, it was just that she had never loved me. We signed a contract on the spot, and as I left, Leo stood there spitting at me. Useless waste. Ethan is a useless waste. In my previous life, my years of education had no effect on Leo, and he only called me Ethan. Now it seems that it was genetic. He carried that disgusting blood. I never would have imagined my last visit to Thorne Industries would be with my divorce papers. Isabella and Julian were not at the company, they had gone abroad for their honeymoon. After that day, however, they were indeed not in the company, but I could hear their names mentioned by the employees all the way. Where did this new vice president come from? Why did he change our working hours as soon as he arrived? I don't know about anything else, but he definitely doesn't understand the business at all. He's just trying to squeeze the ordinary employees. Along the way, all I could hear were employees complaining about these bizarre rules. I placed the divorce agreement on Isabella's desk, and as I was leaving, I saw Mark waiting for me at the door. Mark was my assistant and also my most trusted confidant in this company. In my previous life, he disappeared mysteriously. It wasn't until the collapse of a building that the company was contracted to build that I discovered his body. At that time, the company was exposed for using substandard construction materials, and after a report by an internet celebrity, the scandal quickly fermented. I was pushed out as a scapegoat, bearing the infamy, unable to investigate the cause of Mark's death. But now. Ethan, look at this. Mark handed me his phone, showing his chat history with Julian. After I left, he was responsible for taking over my work. The chat interface was densely packed with work messages sent by Mark, but Julian hadn't replied to a single one. He doesn't reply to my messages, but he still posts on his social media about his travels. Ethan, are you really at ease handing over the company to them? Thorn Industries is your life's work. Faced with Mark's question, I shrugged and said helplessly, I have no choice. I've sold all my shares, and Thorn Industries has nothing to do with me anymore. Mark had a mischievous smile on his face and whispered, others may not know you, but I do. You must have already found a new place. I smiled mysteriously and didn't directly answer his question. Things are accomplished through secrecy. Oak Ridge residential area was the largest residential project that could be contracted in recent years, with a total of 7 phases. Thorn Industries couldn't handle it alone and had to split the profits with Apex Construction, each taking on a portion. When Mr. Thorn established Thorn Industries, he was already a sworn enemy of Apex Construction, and I used Oak Ridge residential area as my stepping stone to enter Apex. I promised to make Thorn Industries give up the contracting rights for Oak Ridge residential area within 3 months. It was now summer, and when I entered the construction site dormitory, my clothes were soaked with sweat. During these 3 months, I would occasionally visit the area contracted by Thorn Industries because I really couldn't remember when that worker had the accident. Back then, a worker accidentally fell into the cement and died. In order to avoid compensation, Julian forcefully suppressed the incident. When the truth came to light, he directly shifted the blame to me, and I was forced to hold a press conference to apologize. I remember that this worker had a daughter who worked tirelessly to find out the truth about her father's death. She gradually became an internet celebrity and found the truth with the help of the public. My frequent inspections were not only to prevent the worker's death but also to use the power of the worker's daughter to completely crush Isabella and Julian. However, I didn't know the exact time of the worker's death. Ethan, what are you doing here? Once again, I found nothing. Just as I was about to go back, I heard someone calling my name from above. I looked up and saw Leo standing on tiptoes on the steel bars. It had only been a week since I last saw him. His clothes were tattered, his face was covered in dirt, and he looked like an orphan. I guessed that Isabella had taken Julian abroad and couldn't be bothered to take care of Leo. Why are you here? Why aren't you in school? Leo pouted and looked at me disdainfully. I am the future heir of Thorn Industries. Why should I go to school and stay with those poor people? I knew it. I'm not your child. Have you ever smelled yourself? You reek of poverty. He pretended to gag. I was a bit stunned, unable to imagine how Isabella usually educated Leo to have such a personality. I shook my head and didn't intend to say anything more to him. Ethan, don't go. Stay and play with me, he ordered. I was about to leave, and Leo roared at me, you are a servant of the Thorn family. How dare you disobey me? He was furious, jumping up and down on the steel bars, completely unaware of the danger. Mom was right. You don't know how to be grateful. You bastard without parents. Before the word bastard faded away, I turned around and saw Leo slip and fall. Thud. A steel bar pierced his chest, and blood gushed out. Leo reached out to me, his eyes filled with terror, and he pleaded, Dad. Dad, save me. This was the first time he called me Dad, but it was too late. I didn't stop. I just called for an ambulance and watched as Leo was taken away. This was the last bit of kindness I would show him. As he was being carried onto the stretcher, Leo stared at me, murmuring, why didn't you save me? You used to warn me about dangers, why not this time? For the first time, I saw panic in Leo's eyes. He begged me to go with him to the hospital. I slowly pulled his hand off mine and grinned. I'm not your dad. Go find your real dad. That night, I felt uneasy. I was woken up by the sound of crying outside the dorm. After getting dressed, I grabbed a flashlight and walked out. Not far away, near the cement truck, I saw a girl crying. She wasn't very old, probably a freshman in college. My heart skipped a beat, and I rushed over. When I saw her face, I stopped breathing for a moment. It was Clara. 1,000 thoughts flooded my mind. Could it be that her father had already had an accident? I handed her a pack of tissues. When Clara saw me, she was shocked, but her expression quickly turned to disgust. You want me to shut up? I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. She stared at me stubbornly, her eyes filled with hatred. I know who you are, but I will make the person who killed my father pay. I looked at her, and for a moment, she overlapped with the woman who delivered the fatal blow to Thorn Industries in my previous life. The current Clara was still a bit naive, but with a little training, she could become a pawn in my hands. I'm not here to stop you. Do you want to make the person who killed your father pay? Clara hesitated for a moment, then nodded firmly. I laid out the whole plan, called Mark, and asked him to cooperate with me, working from the inside and outside. In less than a week, that cement murder case at the construction site was trending on the internet. In the video, Clara tearfully accused Thorn Industries of inaction, saying that her father's death was a complete murder. Not long after, her father's body was found in the unfinished building. With both a witness and physical evidence, Thorn Industries began its first collapse. The day after the incident fermented, the door to my dorm room was pounded on. As soon as I opened it, I was slapped by an enraged Isabella. Before I could recover, she pointed at me and yelled, "Ethan, what are you doing? Do you have to destroy Julian to be satisfied? It's just a death. What construction site doesn't have deaths? Do you have to make such trouble?" Isabella was furious and slapped me again. The taste of blood filled my mouth, and I lowered my eyes. Isn't Julian reaping what he sowed? He insisted on covering this up. Could it really be covered up? How did that worker really die? Don't you know better than I do? My words further enraged Isabella. She knew I was the one pulling the strings, but she only thought I was jealous of Julian. She was convinced that if it could be covered up in the previous life, it could be covered up in this life as well. In the previous life, she pushed me out to quell the public outcry. I was forced to kneel at the company entrance for 3 days and 3 nights, suffering the scorn of thousands. Isabella forcefully suppressed her anger and reached out to touch the red handprint on my face, but I dodged her. She gritted her teeth and said softly, "Just consider it repaying the Thorn family's kindness. Help me take the blame for Julian. I guarantee you can come back as CEO after you get out. I've made arrangements, you won't suffer in prison." Without waiting for my agreement, Isabella grabbed me, trying to drag me out of the dorm. I stood my ground, my heart completely frozen. I stared at the anxious Isabella and said in a low voice, "I repaid the Thorn family's kindness in my last life. Now, it's you who owe me." Isabella seemed to be choked by fate, but in a moment, she lunged at me, her expression ferocious. "You did it on purpose. You did this on purpose. You harmed me in the last life, and now you want to harm me again." Even now, she still firmly believed that I was the one who switched the building materials to inferior ones, that I was the one who harmed her. "Leo's serious injury, you did that on purpose too, right? If something happens to Julian, I'll make you pay with your life." Isabella, as she always did, had no qualms about pushing all the blame onto me. I took a few steps back, revealing Clara, who had been hiding behind me. She was holding a selfie stick, and the phone on it was recording. "Everyone, look. This is the murderer." Isabella stood there, her face dark. Due to the phone recording, all she could do was glare at me before turning to leave. Thorn Industries will withdraw from the Oak Ridge Community Project and will provide sufficient compensation to the victims. This incident is entirely due to the general manager's failure to supervise. We have already dismissed him, and we will give everyone a satisfactory result. The television in the room played the report. Isabella was serious and, with a few words, she defined the nature of the matter. She couldn't bear to see her beloved suffer even a little, and the general manager became their scapegoat. The abandoned general manager stood beside me, the documents he brought on the table. A thick stack. "Ethan, you said you would give me $1 million. Is that true?" I didn't answer but first flipped through the documents in front of me, which were about Thorn Industries' bid for a certain commercial construction project. It was this bid that led to Mark's death. The profit from this commercial construction was huge, but it was still not enough to pay off Julian's gambling debts. To gain more profit, he took the risk of using substandard building materials, causing the building to collapse, resulting in numerous deaths and injuries. Mark discovered that he was using substandard building materials and was forcibly drowned in cement. After the building collapsed, Mark's body was finally revealed. His death was still vivid in my mind, and I couldn't help but shiver. Turning my gaze to the general manager, I said, "I can give you the money, of course. But you have to do me another favor." My eyes were bright as I instructed the general manager to tell Isabella that I was determined to win this bid and let him set a trap for me, making Julian owe more gambling debts. Those gambling debts would drive Julian to a dead end, forcing him to follow the same path as in my previous life. After the general manager left, Clara, who was standing by, frowned and asked me, "Are you really going to compete with him for this bid? Although you've been promoted, you don't have that much power, do you?" After Thorn Industries withdrew, I successfully entered Apex Construction and obtained a relatively high position. Facing Clara's question, I chuckled and replied, "Julian won't give up this bid." Now that Thorn Industries is going downhill, if she wanted to turn the tide, Isabella certainly wouldn't miss this bid. She was reborn with me, so she naturally knew how profitable it was. In the conference room, when I entered, Julian and Isabella had already submitted their bids. Julian had a confident smile on his face, while Isabella gave me a cold glance. As soon as I submitted my bid, I received a message from Isabella on my phone. "Let me tell you, Thorn Industries is determined to win this bid. So what if you're reborn? Without Thorn Industries, you're just a loser." Isabella was sure I would compete with her, unaware that the price of my bid was even lower than Thorn Industries in the previous life. After the bidding ended, I noticed that the smile on Julian's face disappeared. When I came out of the restroom, I happened to see him making a phone call at the door. "Just give me a little more time. I'll have the money to pay you back soon. My wife is the president of Thorn Industries. I can run, but can Thorn Industries run?" The person on the other end of the phone seemed to have relented, and Julian hung up with a dark expression. He looked up and saw me standing in front of him, becoming even more annoyed. Julian deliberately bumped into my shoulder and said hatefully in my ear, "Do you think I'll let the matter of my son go just like that? Just you wait. I'll collect what you owe me for Leo and Oak Ridge with interest." I shrugged, finding his threat to me exceptionally hollow. Buzz. Buzz. I looked at my phone. It was a message from Clara. "Mark followed those people to the construction market. Do you want to come?" So fast. The bidding results would come out in about 3 days, and Julian had already started sending people to find suitable substandard building materials. It seemed that the matter I had instructed the former general manager to do was done well. Julian was already a heavy gambler, and in the previous life, the company's bankruptcy was inextricably linked to his gambling addiction. Back then, Thorn Industries had me to barely keep it going, delaying the bankruptcy. Now, Isabella thought she could handle it, and Julian, with even more gambling debts, was becoming increasingly anxious. This wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 is equal to 2. I looked at the address Clara sent to my phone, a cold smile playing on my lips. The day they would be punished was not far off. Thorn Industries won the bid for the commercial construction, as expected. After a while, I finally went to the hospital to see Leo after he pleaded with me many times. The hospital was filled with the smell of disinfectant. Leo looked pale, but the wounds on his body had healed a lot. He looked at me eagerly, his eyes filled with a dependence I had never seen before. "Dad. Dad, you finally came to see me." Even though I heard him calling me Dad, I remained unmoved. As far as I know, during Leo's hospitalization, Isabella and Julian never visited him once. Just like in the previous life when they eloped, they didn't take Leo with them. And the only one who chose to protect him, me, was deemed by Leo as unworthy of being his father. During his time in the hospital, Leo would occasionally share his life there with me. Sometimes he would also wonder why I didn't love him as much as I did in the previous life. After a while, he came to his own conclusion. Leo held my hand, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, it was my fault before. I really know I was wrong now. Please forgive me." Just then, the ward door was kicked open with a bang. Julian burst in, furious. Seeing Leo and me holding hands, his anger turned into a mocking laugh. "Ethan. Mark is your man, shouldn't you give me an explanation? I know you're jealous of me, but Thorn Industries just landed this huge deal. Are you really determined to destroy it?" he roared. Isabella followed him, her brows furrowed in anger. "I knew you're still scheming to use those substandard construction materials. An orphan is an orphan. A bastard with no parents will always go astray." Mark was tied up by the people behind him and thrown into the ward. There was still wet cement on him, his mouth was sealed with tape. I was about to untie him when I was blocked by the bodyguards. Julian wore a smug smile, as if he thought he had me cornered. "The police will be here soon. You'd better think about how you're going to explain this to them. Using substandard construction materials is not a trivial matter. You might end up in jail for a few years." I wasn't as flustered as they expected. Instead, I stood there with my arms crossed, looking composed. "Isabella, heaven must be blind to give you a second chance. Do you really think that I, a person who was kicked out of Thorn Industries, could pull off such a scheme with just a few trusted subordinates left in the company?" Julian's eyes flashed with panic, but only for a moment. He took out photos from his pocket and scattered them in front of me. There were pictures of the general manager meeting me and a large bank transfer. What if I add the general manager to the equation? Is that enough? I think the worker's death earlier was also arranged by you. Isabella didn't expect me to have private contact with the general manager. Now she completely believed Julian's words. She was furious, as if I was the one who ruined Thorn Industries. "Ethan, I can let go of the worker's accidental death. I can even pretend that you spread rumors about Thorn Industries with that girl because you were angry. But why did you insist on using substandard construction materials again and again? How did our Thorn family ever wrong you?" I shook my head and denied it. I said it wasn't me. "You're still lying at a time like this." While we were in a standoff, the police pushed open the ward door. "Officer, it's him. He's the one using substandard construction materials." Isabella, as if seeing her savior, tried to lead the police to arrest me. The police, however, seemed to ignore her and instead handcuffed Julian. "You are suspected of using substandard construction materials. Come with us." Clara followed the police. She had been authorized and was now broadcasting live. Julian had used substandard construction materials, acting recklessly. Now, the higher-ups wanted to make an example out of someone, and Julian became the scapegoat. As soon as Julian was handcuffed, his arrogance vanished. He almost collapsed to the ground, muttering, "I can't go in. I can't go in, they won't let me go." He looked around and finally placed his hope on Isabella. He almost begged on his knees, "Isabella, save me. Save me." He pointed at Leo, who was still in the hospital bed, and sobbed, "We have a child. If I go in, our child will be fatherless." Isabella was moved. She stood in front of the police, urgently saying, "You really have the wrong person. Julian is a businessman who just returned from abroad. How could he do something that would ruin his own future?" The two officers holding Julian looked at each other. One of them, who seemed younger, said, "We have collected sufficient evidence. And this Mr. Vance has no record of going abroad in recent years." After his words fell, the entire ward fell into silence. Isabella couldn't believe what she heard. She staggered back, staring blankly at Julian, who lowered his head, not daring to meet her gaze. Clara wore a gleeful smile. Her father's death was inextricably linked to Julian. Now, seeing him brought to justice felt like a huge release of pent-up anger. I helped Mark up, ripped the tape off his mouth, and patted down his clothes. Mark took a few deep breaths and finally calmed down. That bastard, he almost buried me in cement, too. Luckily, Clara arrived just in time. She was live streaming, and Julian was wary of the exposure, so he just tied me up. He took out a USB drive from his pocket, containing records of Julian's purchases of substandard construction materials. By this time, Thorn Industries' commercial construction had reached a point of no return. Even though Julian knew he would be discovered, he still held onto a sliver of hope. He chose the same method as in the previous life, believing that as long as he eliminated all the witnesses, he could get away with it. I glanced at Julian, who sat dumbfounded on the floor, a cold smile playing on my lips. Julian, do you have anything to say for yourself now? Clara's phone was still live streaming, but Julian, having nothing left to lose, became utterly vicious. Ethan, what are you so proud of? You raised my child for so many years, painstakingly pulled Thorn Industries back from the brink of bankruptcy, and in the end, it'll still be mine. Leo, lying in the hospital bed, struggled to sit up, wanting to refute Julian. No. No. I squatted down before him, looked him straight in the eye, and said word by word, yours. Do you really think you'll ever get out? After taking over Thorn Industries, how many people have you buried? How many souls do you have on your hands? Can you even count them? Julian was taken away by the police. Isabella stayed in the ward, attempting a final struggle. You knew all along. She looked at my silence, then smiled, tears streaming down her face. You schemed against me. We were married for years, and you schemed against me. Ethan, after all your calculations, wasn't it all for Thorn Industries? Wasn't it all to snatch Thorn Industries away from the Thorn family? I knew you were ambitious, that you wouldn't be content as a live-in son-in-law forever. I was stunned. Even now, Isabella still believed that I did all this for Thorn Industries. After the scandal broke out, the company's bankruptcy would only be faster than in the previous life. I wasn't doing it for the company. I just wanted those who wronged me to pay the price. I know you hate me, resent me, but Julian could never do such a thing. He wasn't with me for money. After Julian was taken away, Isabella seemed to have lost her anchor, and she started talking nonsense. From her ramblings, I pieced together the complete picture of the previous life. She and Julian eloped and were surrounded by a convoy of victims' families. In the end, they were rammed off a viaduct, their bodies shattered. Was it her? I knew it. You must have been instigated by someone to do such a thing. Isabella's eyes were bloodshot, and she pointed the finger at Clara, who was standing nearby. I blocked Isabella, who was trying to rush over, and pulled out the information about the substandard materials and Julian's gambling debts from Clara's bag. This isn't the first time he's gambled. The hole got bigger and bigger, which is why he took the risk of buying substandard materials. I glanced at the stunned Isabella and mocked, you trusted Julian so much, and he fooled you twice. Isabella frantically flipped through the evidence. Her hand trembled as she picked up a photo of Julian at a casino, tears falling from her eyes. Whether it was from hatred or regret, it didn't matter to me anymore. I signaled Clara to stop the live stream. The matter was already trending on social media. Thorn Industries suspected of using substandard construction materials. Thorn Industries vice president, surnamed Vance, suspected of murder, has been arrested. Clara weeps, claiming her father's death has been avenged. After Julian's arrest, due to public pressure, he was directly sentenced to death. To my surprise, during this period, Isabella didn't call me once. I thought, given her relationship with Julian, she would at least plead for him. Thorn Industries' bidding was cancelled, and they had to pay a huge penalty, causing their capital chain to break directly, following the same path as the previous life. On the other hand, I was highly valued by Apex Construction, and my rank rose rapidly. Clara, having avenged her father, continued to work in the influencer field, speaking out for the people. Apex Construction established a branch in the province and asked if I was willing to serve as the general manager. I readily agreed. This city held too many memories, good and bad, all intertwined. I wanted to get out of this quagmire. Before leaving, I went to see Julian. He had lost a lot of weight, and his cheeks were sunken to a frightening degree. When I saw him, he was already half mad. He could only mutter, if only I came back a little earlier, a little earlier. The prison guard said he suddenly became like this and told me to leave early. After seeing him, as soon as I sat down, he seemed to wake up from a dream. Ethan. Help me. I'm back from the future. I know a lot about what will happen. I came back too late. If only I was a little earlier, I could have. He gritted his teeth, his face full of unwillingness but not a trace of remorse. I was a little surprised. Julian was also reborn, just a step behind us. However, it was just a surprise. In both lives, he was a complete villain. Being reborn was just heaven's punishment for him. Before I could ask further, Isabella relented and signed the divorce agreement with me. Thorn Industries was now in ruins, and there's no point for her to drag things out any longer. My last meeting with her was at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Isabella was dressed in a wedding gown, holding a bouquet of flowers. Is there really no chance for us to reconcile? We've both been reborn, shouldn't we give each other another chance? Tears streamed down her face like a beaded curtain, her beautiful face filled with remorse. Let me marry you again, okay? I shook my head silently. Leo, who was standing nearby, exchanged a glance with Isabella and hurriedly knelt before me. Dad. We really know we were wrong. He eagerly tried to kowtow to me, but I stopped him. I just found it ridiculous. In order not to divorce me, Isabella actually used Leo as a bargaining chip. What's even more ridiculous is that Leo was never my child. The moment I received the divorce certificate, the spikes that had been erected all over my body gradually dissipated. Stepping out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the sunlight was blinding. I felt like I was reborn. For the rest of my life, I will no longer live for the Thorne family, but for Ethan Hayes.